Once upon a time, in a small, peaceful kingdom in the mountains, lived a beautiful young princess named Snow White. She had long, black hair, dark as the night sky, and rosy cheeks that shone like the setting sun. She was the daughter of King Frederick and Queen Elizabeth, who both loved her very much. King Frederick and Queen Elizabeth were loved by their subjects and ruled justly over their kingdom. They lived in a large castle on a hill, surrounded by lush gardens and rolling green fields. The queen was known for her kindness and love of music and poetry, while the king was a just and wise leader who always put the needs of his people first. The people in the kingdom were happy and healthy, and the land was fertile and brought bountiful harvests every year. There were great celebrations and festivities, and everyone lived in harmony. But despite all this, an evil queen from another kingdom was very jealous of Snow White's beauty and wanted to put her to sleep forever. One day, while Snow White was picking berries in the forest, the evil queen approached her in the guise of an old witch and offered her a basket of delicious-looking apples. Snow White, who was friendly and innocent, accepted the offer and reached for an apple. But she did not know that the evil queen had poisoned the apple and intended for Snow White to eat it. Once Snow White took a bite, she felt a sharp pain in her throat and fell into a deep sleep. But the evil queen didn't know that 7 good dwarfs lived nearby. They were a close-knit group of friends who lived in a small, cozy cave in the forest. They were a hard-working bunch and each had their own unique personality and talents. There was Dopey, who always smiled and was good-natured, but a bit slow on the uptake. There was Grumpy, who lived up to his name, but deep down had a heart of gold. Happy was always cheerful and optimistic. Sleepy was, well, sleepy. Bashful was shy and reserved. Sneezy had a tendency to sneeze at the slightest provocation. And Doc was the smartest of the group and served as their leader. Every day, the dwarfs ventured into the forest to chop wood and search for diamonds and other precious stones. They worked hard from sunrise to sunset and returned to their cave at night, tired but satisfied with the day's work. They prepared their meals over a fire and ate at a big wooden table, laughing and telling stories. They were content with their simple life and loved each other like brothers. Luckily, the 7 dwarves came across Snow White and found her unconscious on the ground. They were kind-hearted creatures who led simple, hard-working lives and couldn't bear to see someone in need. So they brought Snow White back to their small, cozy cave and took care of her, nursing her back to health. They fed her spoonfuls of a special herbal tea and watched over her as she slept. White slept for a very long time, and the dwarves worried. They feared that the poison had taken effect and that they would never see her wake up again. But as fate would have it, Snow White eventually awoke from her deep sleep, much to the dwarves' delight. She was surprised to find herself in a strange place, and the dwarves gently explained what had happened. Snow White was shocked to hear that the evil queen had tried to kill her and was grateful to the dwarves for saving her life. The dwarves decided to protect Snow White from the evil queen and keep her safe in their cave. Snow White quickly grew accustomed to life with the dwarves and became like a sister to them. She helped them with their tasks and cooked their meals, and they taught her all about life in the forest. They went on adventures together and explored the many wonders the forest had to offer. At night, they gathered around the fire and sang songs and told stories. Snow White loved listening to the dwarves' stories of their adventures and their time in the mines. She was fascinated by their skills and knowledge of the forest, and she learned a lot from them. The dwarves, in turn, adored Snow White and were grateful that she was with them. They enjoyed her company and her cheerful disposition, and they all lived happily together in their cozy cave. When the evil queen learned that Snow White had awakened, she was filled with anger and disbelief. How could this be? She had personally administered the poison and was sure that Snow White was deeply asleep. But now she realized that her plan had failed, and her anger knew no bounds. She was determined to find Snow White and finish her off. She ventured into the forest, searching high and low, her heart filled with malice and hatred. As she walked, the evil queen thought about all the ways she could put Snow White back into a deep sleep. She could poison her again, or maybe lure her into a trap. The thought of finally getting rid of Snow White filled the queen with a twisted sense of satisfaction. She would spare no effort to get rid of her. The evil queen had finally successfully located the house of the 7 dwarves. With a wicked grin on her face, she entered the house and immediately spotted Snow White, peacefully sleeping in her bed. Without hesitation, the queen cast another spell and sprinkled poison over Snow White's lips. As soon as she did, she knew that her plan had been successful and that Snow White would now fall into a deep sleep. The 7 dwarfs, who had just returned from their work in the forest, were full of grief and despair as they saw Snow White once again in a deep sleep. They were devastated that their efforts to wake her up had been in vain once again. They wept bitterly as they took care of their beloved Snow White, and swore revenge against the evil queen who had taken their happiness away from them. Meanwhile, a young prince named Edward had heard of Snow White's great beauty and set out to find her. He traveled far and wide, searching high and low, until he finally stumbled upon the dwarf's cave. When he saw Snow White, he was immediately enchanted by her and knew that he had to have her as his wife. He kissed Snow White, and the kiss broke the spell that the evil queen had cast on her. Snow White awoke from her deep sleep and saw the prince standing before her. She fell in love with him at first sight, and the prince felt the same. When Prince Edward and Snow White arrived at the castle, the entire kingdom rejoiced. People lined the streets and threw flowers at their feet as they walked to the castle. The prince and Snow White rode in a magnificent carriage, smiling and waving to the crowd. When they entered the gates of the castle, King Frederick and Queen Elizabeth were there to greet them. They were overjoyed to see their daughter alive and well and welcomed the prince with open arms. There was a great feast in honor of the prince and Snow White's return, and the entire kingdom came to celebrate. The tables were laden with delicious food and drink, and there was music and dancing late into the night. The prince and Snow White were the happiest they had ever been, and they knew that they would rule the kingdom together with love and compassion. A few weeks later, Prince Edward and Snow White were married in a grand ceremony at the castle. The entire kingdom came to witness their union, and the ceremony was full of joy and celebration. The prince and Snow White exchanged vows under a beautiful flower-covered arch, surrounded by their loved ones. They pledged to love and care for each other forever, and the audience cheered as they shared their first kiss as a married couple. And so, Prince Edward and Snow White lived happily ever after, ruling justly and with love and compassion for all the people in the kingdom. Their beauty shone forever, and they were remembered as the happiest couple in the land. The kingdom experienced a long time of peace and prosperity, and everyone who knew Snow White loved her for her kindness and beauty.